I'm back here with another live stream, and today we're going to be talking Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel, he had a huge game yesterday, 4 rushes for 95 yards. On top of that, 4 catches for 95 yards. On top of that, he had 8 rushes for 45 yards and a touchdown. And then he also threw for a touchdown pass. So he was everywhere for the 49ers yesterday. He's been a big part of their success this year. And so what I want to talk about is this offseason. Deebo Samuel is eligible for an extension because now he's accumulated 3 years of service in the NFL, and he's certainly one of the talents in the NFL that deserve a long term contract. So I wanted to talk about Deebo Samuel's potential contract extension and how that would work out. If you guys don't know me yet, go follow me on Twitter at RohanSports27. I post content there every day, post my thoughts on the 49ers, on the NFL, and I also write for 49ers Web Zone, so check me out there. But starting off with my thoughts, I believe that the 49ers should pay Deebo Samuel a large contract, and here's why. We haven't seen in the NFL, at least in recent time, any player that can play the capacity and the longevity that Deebo Samuel can play with as a 49er. I think that Deebo Samuel, he has found the ability to become a star type of rusher, but also a star type of receiver. In that he could probably have 1,000 yards rushing if he had the volume of that. But he also has shown the ability to be a 1,000 yard receiver. He had 1,405 yards this year, along with 6 touchdowns in the air and 8 touchdowns on the ground. So he is a uh, versatile running back and a versatile receiver. So I believe, yeah, he definitely should be paid. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying, well, they have Brandon Ayuk, they have George Kittle, a stout offensive line, and a very young quarterback that is going to be, he's going to be a good player going on in Trey Lance. I still think with all of the weapons you have offensively, Deebo Samuel is the most important. And why? He provides everything. He provides something that we haven't seen at the receiver position for the 49ers, and that's just explosion. Brandon Ayuk, his first step is not that explosive compared to Deebo Samuel. George Kittle, he's a monster. He's reliable, but he's not as explosive as Deebo Samuel. So Deebo, he possesses a different quality of receiver that the 49ers haven't seen, and that's what they need because he's been essentially the backbone of their offense this entire year. He's had I think it's 8 90+ yard games. He's had multiple 100-yard games. He's even had multiple 150-yard games. So he's definitely been their number one reliable option, and I think he deserves a contract extension. I wrote about this earlier today, so if you guys want to see what I said about this, I'll quickly show you guys. So I essentially said Deebo Samuel, he deserves to be paid this offseason. Wrote about how he's been impressive all season, ended with 77 catches, 1,400 or for 1,405 yards. The most important part, he had an 18.2 yards per catch rate this year. That's elite. That's like Tyreek Hill, and he provides a lot more than Tyreek Hill on the ground. Not to say Tyreek Hill isn't good. He's definitely a great player. I'm just saying that's the level of competition that we're talking about here at such a high rate with 77 catches and 1,400 yards plus in the air. On the ground, he rushed for over 6 yards a carry, which is an elite rate for any type of guy. So I think it definitely matters because 6.2 yards per carry, that's better than any running back in the NFL. And he did it at a consistent rate, rushing for almost 60 times this year. And at times, he single handedly kept the 49ers in football games. Why? He's got the ability to translate 5 yard gains into 20-yard games. He can just run after the catch, break tackles, and generate a lot of yardage after the catch because he's got the ability to not only break tackles through that pure strength of his, but he's got the ability to accelerate with the elite speed that he carries. He might be the fastest player on this team despite his burly frame. Now, looking at other player contracts, let's look. DeAndre Hopkins currently leads all receivers at 27 million. Remember that number, 27 million a year after signing a 2-year, 54 million extension. There are two things that you should know. Average annual value, which is 27, but also the range. DeAndre Hopkins had a short-term deal, a 2-year deal, despite being, I think, 29 years old. So that's why the average annual value kicked up. I don't think Samuel's going to be as costly as Hopkins, but he's going to be in the range of the second highest receiver, which is Julio Jones, who gets paid $22 million a year as a part of his 3-year, $66 million contract, which is the second highest for a receiver right now. I see a comment. I think it is important to notice because I think the 49ers should set the market with Deebo before receivers like Metcalf and Brown, and that's exactly what I'm thinking right now. So the reason that the 49ers need to pay Deebo early is because, like this comment says, there are eligible extension receivers like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Terry McLaurin. We're all going to be looking to set that market as well at the $22 million range, as well as impending free agent Devontae Adams, although I think he's one notch higher and he's going to challenge not Julio Jones, but DeAndre Hopkins on that $27 million contract. So there is a lot of competition. The 49ers need to get ahead. And this is not what the 49ers do. The 49ers aren't a team that's going to get ahead of the market and try and figure something out. Rather, the 49ers, what they do is wait till training camp. Right before training camp, that's when they've normally signed players. Look at George Kittle and look at Fred Warner. Last year, Fred Warner, he signed right before training camp. The year before, it was George Kittle who signed right before training camp in 2019. Both of them had 5-year deals worth $95 million. And I think that if we're looking at Deebo Samuel's potential contract, which I'll get to in a moment, it's going to look similar to those contracts. They aren't new to this race because they beat out the Colts and Darius Leonard last year, who signed after Warner for a deal about $4.5 million more at 99.25. Warner signed a $95 million contract. So this year, I think it's a little different, and I think they're going to take initiative because Deebo Samuel is that valuable player at a valuable position. I think wide receiver is more valuable than linebacker, which is why they're going to take initiative, and also because of how good he is, not only as a receiver, but also as a rusher. So let me think about the details of a potential extension for Deebo Samuel. I think it's going to likely be a 5-year deal, not a 4-year deal, but likely a 5, especially given Samuel's already 25, turning 26 next year. Potential for a 3-year opt-out clause. Why? Parag Marathe, the executive vice president of the 49ers, that's exactly the type of deal that he's strung throughout his entire kind of career in extensions. The last 2 years, that's exactly what George Kittle, Trent Williams, and Fred Warner have had, that 3-year opt-out clause, making it essentially 2 contracts in one with a 3-year deal and a 2-year deal. In Trent Williams' case, 3-year and a 3-year. So that's what I'd expect from the 49ers. In total, I expect Deebo Samuel to set the market. If the 49ers are first, this is how I think the deal goes in terms of first in front of Metcalf's deal, McLaurin's deal, and AJ Brown's. I think it should be around a 5-year, 112.5 to 122 million deal, essentially 22.5 to 24 million per year, which sets and it is eclipsing the rate of Julio Jones, who currently is at $22 million, which is the second highest in the NFL. So look for a 22.5 to 24 million average annual value deal with 5 years. And thinking of guaranteed money, I think it's going to be around the 63 to 70 million range. Guaranteed money is important. That's where these contracts normally skew. And I think that it's going to be a record-setting deal in terms of guaranteed money. Julio Jones is currently guaranteed 64 of that 66 million, although it is a shorter deal with a 3-year span. With the 5-year deal, I think the 49ers are going to guarantee about 60% to a little over 60% of Deebo Samuel's contract. That's why I think it's going to be around 63 to 70 million guaranteed. That's just based on how they've operated with contracts before. Obviously, this being the higher end, this being the lower end. And here's how I think the deal is going to be structured. I think they're going to have a fairly hefty signing bonus, although they haven't been really that willing to give out as high signing bonuses. While this might change because of the TV deal that's coming up, as signing bonuses can expand over 5 years, I think they could give a fairly solid signing bonus, which will span over the 5 years of this contract. But I think most of the guaranteed money will go toward the first 3 years. Why? It gives the 49ers room for a potential extension down the line with the guaranteed money when that signing bonus, but no guaranteed money regardless apart from that. So it gives the 49ers some leeway for an extension down the line, but it also gives Deebo Samuel some leeway with the opt-out clause where he'd probably be probably 28 before he reaches his next contract. So it gives both sides some flexibility, which is important in these big-time deals. Looking at it, it likely would be record-setting in terms of money guaranteed. I don't think the Fred Warner one was, but I think it definitely would be trend setting, which is important to see. But should Samuel prefer a 4-year deal? I predict a 4-year deal in the range of 92 to 100 million. As you see, this deal is a little more expensive than the deal I've provided here. Instead of 22.5 to 24, I believe a 4-year deal would be in the range of a 23 million to 25 million average annual value deal. But I think a 5-year deal is likelier because it gives Samuel more flexibility because it provides him with an extra year and extra money on his contract. And a 4-year deal would provide him with less, although more money per year. I think that Samuel would definitely prefer the first option, given that he'd get a second contract in the NFL or third contract in the NFL after the second contract. And then in addition to that, I'd expect incentives for accolades like NFL receiving yards, OPO, Offensive Player of the Year, MVP, Super Bowl MVP, and more. But that is if San Francisco beats Samuel to the chase. I think this is set under the pretenses that San Francisco is the first team to make a deal with their star third-year receiver. If the others do, they're likely going to have to top whatever AJ Brown, Metcalf, or McLaurin makes in order to give Samuel what he wants because he deserves it. Samuel has arguably been the best receiver out of the three or out of the four. So he deserves to make the most money, which is why San Francisco should lock him up first in order to save money, especially for the future when they have an upcoming Nick Bosa contract that is going to be on their hands either this offseason or next offseason. So that is the reasoning and the logic behind signing Deebo Samuel to a long-term contract. I think one other thing, though, that we need to mention is what if the 49ers don't pay Deebo? This is a big time thing because if the 49ers do not pay Deebo Samuel the contract that he might get this offseason, there are going to be two implications. One, with all of the deals that are happening this offseason, meaning DK Metcalf's potential deal, McLaurin's potential deal, AJ Brown's, and Devontae Adams's potential deal, I think that if you wait one season, you're going to have to pay even more money. And I think Deebo Samuel, if he provides one more year of production like he's produced this year, he's going to be in that range, like a Devontae Adams range, in the $27 million range. So you're essentially saving about 3 to 4 million per year, which is important, especially when you have less leeway to sign a guy like Nick Bosa, who's going to have, like, he's probably going to demand $27 million a year, like a quarterback level contract. And it's important that you do it earlier than later because if you kick out the money later, and it's going to be even more harder when you have a rookie quarterback who's going to expect more money on a second contract should he get there in Trey Lance. You have to maximize the years that you have with Trey Lance, which is important logistically because that's how you maximize your Super Bowl window. If you have a lot of young players like the 49ers do right now, but you're not paying them until later on in the years, you're going to have a lot of salary cap issues later on, even with the TV deal, which is important. And that's why it's imperative that Deebo Samuel gets paid this offseason, because if they don't, I doubt the 49ers pay him. Because if you pay him next year, you're paying him way too much money because you're going to have to match what Devontae Adams or a guy like that makes, which Devontae Adams is looking probably to eclipse DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. That's $27 million. Look for Devontae to get 28, which means a guy like Deebo is probably going to have to get 28 and a half if he puts up another season like this season. And one thing that we've learned from this year, don't bet against Deebo. You talk about durability. He played 16 games this season. That's phenomenal. With the amount of hits that he's taking, with the amount of physicality that he plays with, and with the amount of production that he puts up on the field, that's phenomenal. So I think that Deebo Samuel definitely deserves it. But looking at if the 49ers do not pay Deebo Samuel this year, I think that they will not pay him a contract. I think they'll look to trade him after next season. Should they not? Should they wait it out? I think they pay him, or sorry, they don't pay him, trade him before that 5th-year option, and they let him go. Why? Because it's going to be too hefty, and given the options you already have, you can't pay that much money compared to what you would pay him right now, despite the immense value that he provides to your offense. It'd be a big time hit, but you'd likely get a first-round draft pick, if not more, similar to like a Stephon Diggs compensation package in return for a guy like Deebo Samuel, and he get the money wherever else he goes. So I think that the 49ers either will pay him this offseason or they don't pay him at all. And they trade him for like a first round pick or more in the future, because that's how the NFL kind of works, right? If you see these contract disputes, if you see some guy holding out a training camp, it's not going to be helpful for the 49ers. And it's just not going to be helpful for culture. It's also not going to be helpful because you're going to be paying him too much money later on when you can't afford that, essentially. So it's important that the 49ers maximize their window right now, because you've got Trent Williams, who's already 33 years old. You've got a guy like Trey Lance, who's just got, after this year, he has only 3 more years on his rookie deal before that fifth-year option, which is going to be pretty pricey. It's probably going to be in the $18 to $22 million range. I don't know the exact number, but it's going to be pretty pricey should the 49ers pick it up, obviously. You also have Brandon Ayuk, who will be, expecting a second contract should he get one from the 49ers in a couple of years. George Kittle's being paid right now. That money kicks up. Fred Warner's being paid right now. Nick Bosa is going to get paid like a quarterback in a couple of years. So it depends. It really depends. So that's how I'm going to be looking at it. And that's why I think the 49ers should be paying Deebo Samuel this offseason. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if I missed anything. But that's that's all that I have for today. Just wanted to give you guys my thoughts on Deebo, why he should remain a 49er, and what happens if the 49ers don't pay him this offseason. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.